Well, hello everyone. So the point of this video is to show you how you can create a simple word-based reaction time study using psychopy. So I thought, well, why not do a lexical decision task? Because it's very simple to set up and it should give you a good idea of how this bit of software works. The version I've been using is 2020.2.5. The great thing about psychopy is that it is completely free, so you don't need to buy any expensive licenses, and basically any time you spend on learning this is time well invested, because you're learning a transferable skill. You will always be able to use it because that software will always be there to be used at no cost by you. So there are three steps I want to take in creating this lexical decision task. So let's have a look at the psychopy program. This is what it looks like if you start it up. You can see at the top there are several tabs. There's a builder tab, there's a coder tab, and a runner tab. Will be mainly working in the builder tab, because that gives us this nice graphical user interface to create our experiments. So the first thing I want to do is just have a look at the main settings, which can be found up here. And well, it always helps to give the child a name, so let's call this one maybe lexical decision task. I'm not going to make any other changes. Let's just briefly click through these various screens here. I'll leave everything at the defaults. This is for the screen setting. I just wanted to point out there's this section called units, which allow you to specify which units you're going to use to measure the size of the things you're going to show on the screen. So many of you might be familiar with using centimeters or pixels to indicate the size of the screen of these objects. But for me, the main reason why I use psychopy is that I want to take my experiments online, and there you have no control really over the size of the screens that your participants have in front of them when they do your experiment. If you use this height setting, which also happens to be the default, the size of the objects is specified relative to the screen size. For example, if I create a box, for example, here on the screen, and I say, okay, give the box a size of 0.1, then basically it will be 10% of the overall height of the person's screen, if that makes sense. So everything is expressed relative to the size of the user's screen, which makes a lot of sense in my head. So I'll leave it at the default here. Okay, so let's try to get started. So these were the settings. It probably helps also to save, even though we haven't really done anything yet, to save the study. Let's call this lexical decision task. And you pick a folder. Documents is fine for now. Save. Okay, so the second thing we wanted to do, if we just go back to our task, is we want to create a single trial. So that just shows, for example, one fixation cross and then one word or non-word on the screen, and then the user or the participant has to press a button. Is this a word? Yes or no? That's basically how these lexical decision tasks work. So here we have a graphical illustration of our trial structure. You've got time on the x-axis. So maybe we will first want to have a fixation cross in our trial. Yeah, maybe for 500 milliseconds we want to show a fixation cross on the screen. The way to get that in there is you click on stimuli here, and then you've got lots of options. You can see here polygon, that's what we want here. And then we get lots of options. Maybe we could start by changing the name to something more meaningful. Let's do fixed cross. And you can see here it's got timing parameters. Yeah, so it should be there at the very beginning of our trial so that the start time of 0 is right. And if we want to make it 500 milliseconds, we need to have 0.5 seconds here. And we can select different shapes. Yeah, so we want a cross. Let's try that. Yeah. I would always recommend testing things as soon as you've put them in there. So I've now said, okay, look how it has changed our time axis here. Yeah, so it now goes from 0 to 0.5 seconds. Now, if we want to just have a look at this, what we would expect, it should show just a fixation cross on the screen for 500 milliseconds. Yeah, let's try to save this. And then one of these buttons will run it. Okay, let's do this one, run experiment. Note how that has now taken us to a different tab here at the top. So we were now in the runner tab. And you can enter any number here. Okay, that was our fixation cross. It was quite large, yeah? So we want to make that smaller. So I go back into psychopy. The general logic is if you want to change an object, so we've got an object called fixed cross, and you can just click on it, and then we can change the settings. So it was very large, so we want to change the size settings. Note here I can say set the width and the height of our fixation cross. And it's currently set there at 0.5. Yeah, so remember these are percentages. So at the moment it takes up 50% of my screen's height. That's why it was so huge. Yeah, let's maybe have a tenth of that, 0.05. Okay. And now we also want to have a word on the screen, yeah, or a non-word. Yeah, so after the fixation cross, we should want to see such a word on the screen. Yeah, so could call it text. That's fine. And when do we want it to start? Well, it should really start after the fixation cross has disappeared. So at 0.5 seconds it should come on. And we want it basically to remain on the screen for as long as needed, basically until the user or the participant has made a decision. Yeah, so I'll leave this field then empty. And now let's put in a word, any English word. I don't know, maybe desk. You can notice that the text also has a height attribute, so we'll look at that, how tall things are now. So we've now updated our trial. We've got the fixation cross for 500 milliseconds. And then we've got a bit of text which will go on forever, yeah, for the time being, because I didn't specify a duration. Let's take a look at this now. Okay, there's our cross, there's our word. That looks okay, I think. Now to get out of this, I think escape does the trick. Yeah, so that took me out of there, that experiment. Okay, so we're getting there one thing at a time. Now we want to collect a response from the user. Yeah, so they should decide, is that word on the screen a word in the English language or is it not a word? Yeah, so for that we can put in under responses, we can basically select how should users give their responses. You can see they could use the mouse, yeah, they could use a joystick. We want to use the keyboard to give a response. And that brings up this screen here. So the first thing we want to set is when should this response become active. Yeah, we don't want the participants to be able to make a decision during the fixed cross duration. That would make no sense at all. They should at least wait until they've actually seen the word. So I'll change the start time here to 0.5 seconds, which is when the word appears on the screen. Next, another thing you can see here, oh no, I've just taken the cross away. There's this option, force end of routine. Yeah, that means as soon as the user, the participant, has pressed a response key, the trial will end, which is exactly what we want. We don't want that word to be appearing on the screen forever and ever. Yeah, and immediately here in the field below, you can see which keys are currently defined as response keys. Yeah, you can see they are always encased with single quotes and separated by a comma. Yeah, so at the moment the Y, the N, the left arrow key, the right arrow key, and the space bar are defined response keys. So for our purposes, let's change that. So basically people are making decisions, is it a word or a non-word? So to make our lives easier, we could say only W and N are allowed keys here. Yeah, so maybe they should press W if it's a word and N if it's a non-word. I could have used any two keys here. Yeah, I just chose to use these two keys. Okay. Let's stick with that for the time being. Okay, so now we've got a new entry here, key response. Let's just see whether that works. Yeah, so what happens if I run the experiment now? So now it waits for a response. Yeah. Any other keys are currently not working. They are not doing anything if I press any other keys. The only keys that have an effect are W and N because I defined those as the response keys. So this is a word, so I would press W. And that ends the trial. Yeah. So that's basically step 2 done. We have created a single trial. Yeah. So now we want to, of course, not just show one word. In an experiment we want to show lots of words and lots of non-words. Yeah, maybe 100 or 200. Now you might be tempted to think that, oh, we now need to create 200 of these trials, so that basically we're replicating what we have here at the bottom again and again and again and again. Yeah, but that would be very tedious. What we're doing instead is we'll create a loop, yeah, where basically it goes around in circles, and on each new repeat we're only changing some key things. Everything else stays the same. Yeah. For example, the fixation cross will always be the same on each loop. Yeah. The keys that they have to press, W and N, that will also stay the same on each iteration of the loop. Basically, the only thing that changes is what we show on the screen. Yeah, either a word or a non-word. So how can we create such a loop? Well, the first thing to do is to think about what will vary from one trial to the next. Yeah, think about this. Yeah, so I'll start up an Excel document where we put in all the things that will vary from one trial to the next. Yeah, so one thing will obviously be the word that we're showing. Yeah. So for example, in trial 1 we might want to show desk. And let's think of a non-word. Maybe in trial 2 it will be tisk. I think that's not a word in English. And then maybe chair in trial 3, and let's have another non-word, tonk. Okay, so that's one of the things that varies. Now we also want to have an information in here about whether it is a word or a non-word. Yeah, and we could do that via the button that they have to press. Yeah, so desk is a word, so they would have to press the W button. Tisk is a non-word, so they would have to press the N key. Chair is a word, they have to press W. And tonk is a non-word, they have to press N. Yeah, so I'll stop here. In a real experiment you will probably have more entries than this. So let's save this Excel document, because these are now the only things that will vary from one trial to the next. I think this is where I saved my study. Let's call it lexical decision task conditions. Okay. All right. So now we can insert loop. Yeah, basically to create this loop here that I was talking about earlier. And now we want to, it tells us at the bottom, click where you want the loop to start. So we want it to start here, and we want it to end here. Yeah. Okay. And now we've got some settings. If I were to leave this at 5 here, it would do the whole thing 5 times. Yeah, so it showed all 4 trials 5 times, so 20 trials in total. I'll put this down to 1. Yeah, and here it asks us for a conditions file. This is the one that I've just created in Excel. So let's open this up. And you can see it has already found the relevant information in here. Yeah, so we've got 2 what psychopy calls parameters. Yeah, so the word, basically the first column, and correct, that was the second column in my file. and it's got four rows, because these four conditions here. Okay. Let's see what happens now, whether that has already done the trick. That's a word, that's a word, that's a word, that's a word. So it has not yet worked as we were hoping it would be. We were expecting that it would show us the 4 different words, but instead it just showed us desk 4 times. So what was going on there? Yeah, let's have a look at the text objects, which is where we really want psychopy to use the information that was in the Excel file. So, and you can see here that where it says text, yeah, we've put in desk and it is set as a constant. Yeah, constant means it will show the same thing on every single trial. Yeah, we want to change this to set at every repeat. Yeah, and then what should it show on every repeat? Well, we want it to use this variable that we've defined in the Excel file. And the way to access that variable, so you might remember I called it word, I put word at the top of that column, is to just put a $sign in front of this. Yeah, so $word, that should show the actual word I have in my Excel file. Let's try this then. Yeah, and you can see this has worked now, so it has updated the word it's showing on each iteration of the loop. We haven't yet done anything with our column correct, yeah? So let's look at that now. Where could we use that? Well, we could use it when we check for the key response of the user, yeah, because there is a option here store correct, yeah, and then we can define where psychopy can find the correct answer. And again, we can use this variable that we've defined. So I've called this one correct in the Excel file. So I'll put in correct. And then it will use that information from the Excel file to evaluate on each trial whether the response was correct or not. So while I'm at it, I didn't really pay attention whether the order was random, how the words were shown on the screen, or whether they appeared exactly in the same order as I've entered it into the Excel sheet. So I'll go back to trials. And look here, we've got different options here at the top where it says loop type. So at the moment this is set to random. So it will randomly present one of the 4 trials that's in the Excel file. Yeah? If you wanted to go through it from the top to the bottom without randomizing, you would, for example, choose sequential, but random is fine here. Okay, let's then run this one more time. And I'll intentionally make at least one mistake now. So I think I've made a mistake now on the second trial, because I wanted to show you where you can find the output files that are generated by psychopy. So you can see here in that folder where I've saved my experiment, it has created a subfolder called data. Yeah, and if we look into that, we get lots of files, well, because I've just run it lots of times, and you can basically see it puts the participant number at the beginning, and you get each output file in different formats. So let's look at the .csv file here of the trial that I've just done. Yeah, and you can see here, well, first of all, we get the same variables that are specified in my conditions file. They also appear here, yeah, but now in the order in which they were presented to the participant. Yeah, you can see what the correct response was, and somewhere in here you get which key was actually pressed and whether that response was correct or not. I think that's this column. Yeah, so 1 is a correct response, 0 on the second trial. I made a mistake, so that's coded as a 0 for an incorrect response. Yeah, and I also get a reaction time here in seconds. Yeah, I was not a good participant. I was very, very slow. But typically, reaction time is what you're looking for as your dependent variable when you analyze such lexical decision tasks. And that is it, basically, how to get started in psychopy. I hope you found this useful.